Greetings and salutations, everyone. Welcome back to the Inn of Planar Crossroads. And, as always, welcome back to our Around the Hearth discussion. This time, we are discussing alignments. Last time we discussed alignments as a concept. Now, we're discussing implementing alignments into your game. And we're assuming now that you are going to have some form of alignment in your game. So that's what we're going to discuss this time. But first, we need to discuss all the people that are here. So, announcements. Always less than 5 minutes. You can time me. Here we go. As far as I announced this last time, so I'm going to announce it again. As far as announcements for the Inn of Planar Crossroads, we are coming towards the end of the archive series where we've been re-releasing things that were on another channel that I'd worked on, and we're coming to the end of that with all the deity stuff. And so after that, we'll probably put out a few polls on our YouTube, since we got access to the community tab. I guess early, because you're only supposed to have access to it after you get 1,000 subs, but we've got less than that. But don't tell YouTube. Shh. Yeah. Don't tell YouTube. But we will go ahead and be posting those there. I'm glad we got access to do that, because that lets actual viewers that pay attention to the content be able to give feedback. So we'll put out some polls there once those come pretty close to ending or are done. And then I believe Levi had a spotlight for us, so I got to pull it back up. But what was that spotlight, Levi?
So it is Open Legends Dwemer Descend into Madness. It is a campaign setting with adventure aspects to it. It ties in a sanity system. It changes how the magic works. If you go into the GM guide, LM guide, it will tell you interesting background aspects of it. There are created monsters. I am selfishly bringing this one up because I helped the guy who made this do some of the world building. There's, I think, a lot of interesting things in there. And I do recommend that if you are not sure how you would like it, that you at least download the player guide, see how you feel about it, and maybe think about purchasing the Game Master guide, which is only, a little under $7. So, not expensive. Pays for artists and editors. Good things.
Yup. Okie dokie. So, that was myself and Levi. We also have Zachariah from Avenue Studios, who plays Tiri on the game. Well, Tiri and Pim Pam, I guess. So, yeah. And that's on their Bomb Squad videos. And as well as not Daniel Stacy, but Kristen.
Yeah.
So, there you go. It's Kristen. Unless Daniel got a real glow up, I mean, that's one heck of a makeover, Dan. So.
Exactly.
All right.
And I play Ingrid, and another character. If you watch the series, you'll figure out who she is.
Yep. I mean, we're pretty far into the series now, so that's interesting. So, someone having to go back and watch hours of fun content to listen to, and they have a podcast version too. So
yep, anywhere podcasts are.
All right. I think that's everybody. So, travelers, come in, sit down, warm your feet by the fire. Get the beverage of your choice. I prefer stars, I guess. That's the joke. And let's get into the discussion of the topic for today. Alignment systems and implementing them into your games. So, we touched on this last time, and it is only fair to bring it up for how influential it is in the tabletop gaming spheres. The idea of alignment, and specifically cosmic alignment, and the idea of law and chaos and good and evil. And those type of relationships between the moral standing on a large scale for your characters and your setting. And we discussed how there's usually 9 alignments if you go by Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder, a lot of the others. You've got your law axis and your good axis, and they kind of interact in 9 different segments. And that's usually represented by, I'm showing something to the viewers, something like this, which has lawful and neutral and chaotic and evil and all that type of stuff. But there's also been one that somebody broke down, which we'll touch on it in a minute, but I'm not sure I much care for it, which is a 5 alignment system, but we'll touch on that in a minute. First off, deciding if you want to use cosmic alignment in your system. We touched on this last time at the very end. Some things benefit from having cosmic alignment and some things don't. All of them kind of benefit from having an idea of a personal alignment, and this falls, getting into the crunchy part, this falls into something more along the lines of what I would think would be a better system than the 9 alignments, which would be the beliefs and instincts from like the Burning Wheel or other systems that use that. That might be a better way to do it than going for cosmic alignments and the 9 alignments if you are doing so for just personal individual alignment. I'm willing to get feedback on it from everybody, but the idea of, and I guess this is something we can start with, would you guys think that it would be better to do a personal alignment system if you're going to have personal alignments like in Call of Cthulhu or in another system that doesn't benefit from having cosmic alignment, to do beliefs and instincts or, the personality of the character rather than an alignment system for them?
Well, I'll jump on and say, yeah, I think that if you're not going to have a real hard cosmic alignment be a part of the world, if good is not a force of nature, and if chaos is not a force of nature that you can tie into, and you're really just looking at how are you going to play your character, which is kind of like that low level alignment that you just think, oh, I'm going to be kind of chaotic, and then we get a kind of a bad boy, so I'm going to be a little bit like evil. You might as well just say pull up a Myers-Briggs personality and go through a test as your character and find out where you go and say, hey, yeah, I'm happy with my outcome, or I am I'll change it up a little bit to be more like this outcome. Excuse me for a moment here. Go ahead.
I do think Myers-Briggs is actually a pretty strong one to go for if you don't want an alignment system that is worked around around the 9 alignments. If you want to have something more closer to a personality alignment, you could probably, or at least a personality type of thing, you could do the Myers-Briggs. It works. Everybody,
I can't even wrap my mind about trying not to have a deity or something. There's no, for me, there's no baseline, nothing to compare off of. I mean, you're just kind of floating out there and you're just doing whatever you want in a way. And I'm for me personally, I need that baseline of what my character is aspiring to be in comparison to the deity. So I'm for me, I'm just you just need it. Right?
Welcome to relative moralism. Yeah.
So in this, there are definitely things to compare yourself to, but it is true that in this sense, it's not that they wouldn't like something objective to compare themselves to as much as they don't think there is something objective to compare themselves to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right, they're getting as close as they are able, would be the concept in that.
Yeah. So, this is why I think that most systems actually do benefit from the idea of cosmic morality if you're going to have deities. But if you're not going to have deities, then, not necessarily. The classic example, again, would be something based off the works of Cthulhu, the works of Lovecraft, or Robert E. Howard and their worlds that they made and worked around in. Those worlds don't necessarily benefit because Set is a deity there, but the avatars of Set get killed all the time by Conan. Well, not all the time. There's a couple stories. Or people serving Set. Or there's real sorcery. There's real magic, but magic is a force of nature, and and entities control it and push it forward. And in Lovecraft, there's magic. There's mystical things, but what we call magic is not necessarily like fae and fairy magic. It's like in manipulating the universe and things like that around you, and warping reality around you. So I can see where those would not benefit from it, but they would benefit if a character had determining your character's personality and not their alignment. But having to do that in other systems, I don't really know that works, because a lot of people like to play clerics or again, paladins or crusaders of some kind that usually have a deity associated with them, which leads to the idea of you're going to have to do this mechanically somehow. So,
you could do the anathema system, though.
You can, yeah. What you run into is there's usually spells or things like that are traditionally associated, like protection from law, protection from chaos. Well, what are you going to do then if you're in the abyss trying to retrieve, like if you're doing any kind of planar hopping campaign, probably needs to consider cosmic alignment, because that's the point of the planes.
I was assuming that the anathema was going to be cosmic in this sense. Like, anytime you did this, you were angering certain gods and areas, and anytime you did Y, you were pleasing or angering a different set. Like, you were still having that sort of... Now, obviously, in a lot of the systems that currently exist, you do kind of need to use the lawful and good version of this alignment, just because that's what we have the rules written for. But you could still just have, like, this is a god of X, and this is their standards, without the specific labeling of lawful and good.
I think that one thing that can benefit, if you are going to try to make this a system that you're tracking in, you could do the faction system with the anathemas like you're talking about, and actually have those like representing a faction rep instead of something else.
Yeah. In this case, divine factions?
Yeah, divine factions, which is kind of cosmic alignment. It's just you've got a score thing behind it. So that is a one way, mechanically, if you're wanting to try and keep track of things with little tick marks and stuff, you can do that with these type of tick marks and kind of get that worked around. What you run into is, in your world, how many deities are there that are lawful good? Like, the lawful good deities don't always agree. The lawful neutral deities don't always agree. The deities don't agree. That's kind of part of the planar conflicts in the games. So you want to have a way to keep track of that. And if you tried to keep track of all the different factions, like if you were an ally of Abadar and of Erastil, those are both lawful neutral, but one is for cities and one is for small communities. And Erastil doesn't much like the ideas. It is anathema to Erastil to build big, huge, large cities. He wants to keep it family, small, focused, nurtured through like a natural thing. Whereas if you want to use Abadar, while they're not in direct conflict with each other, they don't agree on the methods of going about their goals of building law and community up. So they're both law deities, but they do not agree on how to pursue that. And then that means you would have to keep track of them separately. You'd have to keep track of the faction rep separately for all of these deities, and that's more of a. That's where you have to be really crunchy. You get even more and more crunchy. So it probably would be best to just have kind of a, again, like you're talking about, you got rules for the alignment system, and having anathema for those particular alignments instead of just those 9 alignments, or just whatever amount of alignments you have. Just those. That's one way to do it, and then using a rep point system. I think that.
Oh, I was going to speak to the concept of like how crunchy you want to make your system when you're taking alignments into effect. Alignments have an impact that's a little bit different whether you're talking about your setting and your system. So when you have the traditional 9 alignment system, you have to remember that how you implement that affects the balance of the crunchy numerical game balance of the gameplay. Like certain things that are empowered by alignment or limited or held back by alignment, or certain class builds need alignments to be a thing so that your spells are only so powerful. And you want to be careful that that if you're going to play light and free and loose around alignments, well, that might make some classes, some builds, some spells a little bit too powerful. So I'm not saying don't do it, but just be aware of how that affects the balance. If you take power away from alignment systems, then wizards and that don't have to worry about them, or knights and soldiers that don't have to worry about alignment systems as much, might be overpowered or underpowered by this shift in the system.
Mm-hmm. And I can see that being a thing that would probably get really tough to try and balance out if you had to go through each and every class. That's why it's important to consider. That's why there are rules that have already been thought out for implementing alignments, like with the 9 alignment system. But if you want to choose a different kind of system, I have seen, let me see. I'll share it in the chat, copy image, and I'll put it over here in the Discord for y'all to see. But I've seen this alignment that I'm showing the viewers, where it's got lawful good over here, and then it has something called social good and moral good. Social and moral. On one level, I'm like, oh, cool, there's more granularity for it. And then I'm like, but what does this granularity actually add? And that's where you run into the problems of saying, oh, well, we're going to have this alignment and we're going to make it there's more alignments now, so it's going to be more representative of your character. Oh, so you're not doing cosmic alignment in that normal sense. Okay, that means you need to have a plane for each of these things if you're doing planar alignments. If not, you need to have some overlap. So you're talking about 25 different planes that you need to keep rep for. And 25 different alignments you need to keep rep for. I'm not sure that that's mechanically beneficial. And I'm open to feedback on this one, because it's the first time I've seen this chart researching for this video.
I think it's cool, and like I said, it might be tricky if you're being very particular about someone having to fall into a box all the time. But I think I've heard enough of people saying, like, well, I'm going to play a character that's neutral, that leans one way or another, and that's what that chart really seems to say to me. Like, I'm going to be true neutral because I don't really subscribe heavily to anything. Like, I'm not a force for chaos and goodness, but I lean towards chaos and goodness. That's kind of my personality bent. But I'm not going to go out of my way to make sure that chaos reigns in my town. I'm just a trickster. I'm not going to go out of my way to make sure that benevolence and love is the hallmark of my kingdom, but I'm going to be good to my neighbor.
Right. And I see where the people might like that. I'm just kind of like, well, you already got 9. Why do you need 25 to say the same thing that 9 can? That's just how I look. That's just how I look at it. But some people may like that granularity. They may like that idea of, oh, I've got 25 different things I could be. I'm like, okay. You got 25 things you could be, but I don't know. Like,
it would fall into one of the 9 anyways. So
yeah.
That's how I feel.
Yeah. It seems like an overcomplication of a system that's you've already got 2 axes already. Why are you... I mean, I understand why people would say moral and social. Like, you're just good to other people. Like, community-driven.
Mm-hmm.
And then I believe moral is supposed to be, like, generally upstanding. But isn't that what good is? So, I mean...
Well, I think it might be looking at a little bit of Kohlberg's theory on moral development. Not to get too highbrow here, but... as a general scale to their alignment system, the principal moralities where you're like, I believe in goodness or I believe in chaos, is where you're about the principle. Whereas some people aren't that passionately aligned for their thing, and they're kind of like, I'm lawful because I fit into something socially. The people around me expect me. It's just easier for me to be orderly rather than my convictions, and I think that this 5x5 chart allows for that that kind of player where your character isn't maybe passionate for an alignment.
I can see that. I don't know. It's not one that I would use, but I could see why other people would use it. But I just think it's... by saying impure, you're already saying evil. By saying moral, you're already saying good, just in a different way. And I get what you're going for on the development of morality, and that goes back, I believe, more to what we discussed before in the previous discussion. That alignment is not representative of what your character must do. It is not prescriptive. It is postscriptive. It represents your character. This is what your character is because of their beliefs and actions. So, like we said, like we were talking about, an anti-paladin can donate to charity not because he, is wanting to further that charity, but maybe because he gets a tax break, or something as simple as that. If you want to use
getting real.
But there you go. Like, he doesn't donate to the orphanage because it's morally good. He donates to the orphanage so that he can get a tax break from the king or from,
or you can get a recruit of orphans.
Or you get
ball.
Yeah. See, there you go. He donates to the orphanage so that he can then recruit from the orphanage his preferred steward, or his preferred employee that he gets, or his preferred sacrifice for immortality.
I mean, all of the above, realistically.
Yeah. He donates specifically to that orphanage because he knows it is run by good people. He donates specifically to that orphanage because he knows that they will raise one that is morally good, and he specifically donates to them so that when he's ready, he has the, perfect sacrifice to achieve ultimate power. By getting one of those moral orphans who have done good and done well. And so you have a evil person doing something for evil purposes that is perceived outwardly as a good act. And this is where you can have that. You still have nuance within the character. It's not just their actions, it's their beliefs and their actions being coupled together. That moral act, that, quote, good action that person just took, suddenly becomes so heinous when you frame it in that light. Because the GM and the player will understand this. The character knows what he's doing. The GM and the LM will know, the LM or the GM or whatever, the runner, the storyteller will know, and the character and the player will know, but everybody else on the table don't necessarily know, or everybody else in the town or the other characters don't necessarily know. So that makes it all the more evil, that act that he's doing. And so that could fall into one of these 5 different things if you want to, but I think that's pretty evil. So
yes. Now
like
we know
an outward alignment, but you have an inward alignment kind of thing going on.
Mm-hmm. And I think we brought up last time that they do that. They actually do that outward and inward alignment, allegiances and stuff like that in Mutants and there was something. I don't know if it was Mutant Masterminds, but it was something where you have a secret alignment and then your other alignment. That is possible mechanically for people if they want to do that. That's more work, but you can do it if you want to.
I also like the idea on the mention of secret alignment. One of the things I've been doing for my Star Wars campaign, which has a very interesting alignment system, where you have light side versus dark side.
Mm-hmm.
Not all characters are on the alignment scale at all. If you're not force sensitive, you don't have dark side points. You don't have a scaling towards darkness. You could be good, you can be evil, you can be neutral, however your character wants to see it. Game Master doesn't track it because the Force doesn't track it very particularly. But for my Force-sensitive characters, I don't tell them what their dark side score is. I used to. It got way too heavily debated, and I decided not to subscribe to that. If a character wants to know, the way I handle this mechanically is if a character wants to know what their dark side score is, they actually have to make rolls and meditate in-game to discern where they are. Otherwise, I just track that separately. As they are doing things that, as a part of the world and the setting, this is deemed evil, this is deemed dark side, I track that as a part of that person's characteristic and personality, and I track my own score. And when they get to a point where they are too evil, where the dark side has started to get a grip on them, it starts to change the way the world works around them. Their light side powers don't work as well. If they aren't taking the time to read into themselves, I don't even tell them why, but their dark powers, they just grow. It's seductive. It draws you in. And the universe is paying them off for what they are and do, as opposed to what they think of themselves. Anakin, like he says in episode 3, from my point of view, the Jedi are evil. He doesn't have a dark side score. Obi-Wan couldn't ask Anakin, how dark are you? He's not dark. He's bringing order to his empire. He wouldn't be aware of that. So when you have an alignment system and it's got this concrete nature to it, don't debate it with the players. If they are a certain way, that is how the game should just go. And if you don't even want to broadcast out what that is, you can let the world reflect it. It's just a part of the system, just like classes, just like levels are, just like hit points are. Just make it a part of the system.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's a good reflection of what used to be in like first edition. They only had the law and chaos alignments, and then you had the law and chaos scale where you went back and forth, whether you were more aligned with law, neutrality, or chaos. And they didn't have good or evil because that wasn't anybody can do lawful acts or chaotic acts, but it was what you were aligning with. And so I can see how that's a good way to implement the idea of keeping track of light side and dark side. If you're not in Star Wars, from law to chaos or from good to evil, you could do both, and you can actually separate them if you want to. You don't have to use the 9 alignments. You can just use a law meter and a chaos meter, or a law indicator and a chaos indicator for yourself, the GM, or your players can use it if they want to. And just kind of keep tick marks on beside the player names: law, law on one side, chaos on the other, and then back and forth. And you can see which way they're bending. You can also do, I've seen a cross diagram where you have law to chaos in the middle, and then good to evil on either side. And then you have a dot that you just move around on the grid. And players can start where they can start at lawful good if they are like a paladin that needs it, or chaotic evil if they're an anti-paladin. So, or if they're a tyrant, I guess you would tyrant champion in Pathfinder 2e is lawful evil.
I believe so.
Yeah. So they can keep track.
Though if we want to do the easier one where it's good, I remember those better because they're the ones I actually play.
Yeah. Fair enough. The Liberator is like chaotic good?
Yeah, Liberator's chaotic good, Redeemers are neutral good, and Paladins are lawful.
And that's very flavorful for that setting, because especially the Redeemer one, because that's Sarenrae, basically. Sarenrae is neutral good. Everybody knows Sarenrae.
And I personally really like being a Redeemer Paladin. It's like, what am I? I am just good. That is the only thing I care about right now.
Yeah.
It's not like I am just good. It's like, I am good, and that is the only thing that matters to me, really.
Doing what is right, doing what is good and right in the universe. That's good, because when you're playing games and you do have some kind of moral system, even if you don't realize you have it, you have a moral system in your game, because there are laws. You have at least a law to chaos meter in your game all the time.
Or at least, negative NPC reaction.
Yeah.
Bare minimum. That is a mini morality system.
Right. I mean, if you go into town and it's got a law, don't steal, and you steal, you're committing a chaotic act willingly, well, then that means you're leaning more towards chaos in that. Even if it takes you more towards the middle, if you were lawful to start with or something. You still have that. You're still doing something that is not lawful, so you're leaning towards chaos. And we didn't discuss this last time, so I'm just going to insert it here. If alignments aren't important, especially if alignments aren't important for your characters don't even have to keep track of them. But that does not mean they are not furthering the goals of those entities. Just because you don't like Asmodeus doesn't mean that your use of lawful evil acts doesn't help him. In fact, he would be more interested in just having you, manipulating you and having you do it without serving him, because then he doesn't have to give you anything. There's no contractual obligations for him. He can, quote unquote, pay you under the table so people don't know you're there. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or he could manipulate people around you, or even send his priests, unbeknownst to that player, and have them reward him or give him particular quests because they know he'll do it a certain way. That player will do it a certain way. And so those cosmic entities, if they exist in your campaign, they're not doing stuff. They're not just sitting around twiddling their thumbs. They have influence in the world. So they may be either trying to seduce that character to that side, or if they can get him to do it for free, why would Asmodeus want to grant him power if he can get him to do it for free?
I mean, mostly so he can do it better.
I mean, fair, but I mean, like a city mayor or something getting corrupted by the power. Asmodeus doesn't care if that mayor is serving him or not. He just cares that it gets done, like the lawfulness of it. And he'll get his soul because of the way he's cosmically aligned. And that's what Asmodeus cares about, getting the soul.
And that's interesting that functions as a very workable moral system. Like in our Bomb Squad campaign, there are deities, but I don't think that Dan has ever specifically given them any alignment. And maybe Kristen can check me on this.
No.
To your knowledge,
alignment to prescribe?
You haven't heard the alignments. Perhaps there are secret alignments that he's keeping track of. Ooh.
I'm sure there are.
I wouldn't put it past him. So. But
well, from my perspective, I can't tell if Ingrid has ever transgressed her deity.
Well, her deity's probably like true neutral or something. Or at least something like that.
I don't know, and my character doesn't know, but I don't know. And so I also would kind of fear the consequences. If Ingrid were to do that, what might happen?
Well, and this is where having a mechanical way to communicate with your player that's tied to a deity and their alignment is, if alignments are something you're using, how it's important. Because, like, Tiri gets communicated with by grandfather with the little automatons. They come around and talk to me. Like, the gods are very active in this campaign of Avenue Studios and Bomb Squad. And especially with Ingrid, she had a literal patron on her shoulder type of thing, like that little angel on her shoulder with Moloch. So that was a literal tie to her deity. So there was that heavy communication there. And I think that it's a misinterpretation of, the settings in general. If you say that, oh, sure, there's deities, and sure, they've got champions, but you're just a level paladin. What do they care about you? They're going to care because you're one of their champions. It's not like you're somebody sitting at home praying to that deity and not doing anything.
You wouldn't be a champion if they didn't care.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I don't know if the deities that we have in our game have multiple champions. According to lore,
I know at least Marosha does.
Oh,
yeah.
Dun, dun, dun.
I do know that.
Right.
I don't. Not at the same time.
Oh, now Tiri's going to get jealous of the other ones when she meets one.
But it's fun that my understanding of the deities and the religions comes through how the characters actually serve them. Like, Tiri serves somewhat irreligiously or irrespectfully, but she's not actually trying to do anything out of line with Grandfather, but she also does not know what his end goals are at all, or what is an anathema to him. She just kind of assumes, well, if he picked her, then she's just going to keep doing what she's doing, and that's probably right, and if it isn't, then that's his fault anyway.
Considering it's a
you're like waiting for the negative to happen, the negative consequence.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we'll have to see if that's going to happen.
Whereas, like, I presume from what we've seen of Ingrid, she's followed her mother's precepts. My understanding of that deity and what they're for and what they're against all comes through how Kristen plays Ingrid. And for me, that's very, very immersive in the world. Is I have something to really ponder through. Not a perfect picture, but a very interesting picture.
And
so you don't have like a book to take out to be like, these are the gods and this is what they believe. It's like, you're kind of finding out from the players, like what the personality of their deity is.
And that makes it, like Zachariah said, very immersive. It also is something that mechanically works well because it increases that verisimilitude. And mechanically, you can do that. I'm not sure if Dan's using the 9 alignments. Probably not. But I'm sure that there's this. The thing is, Dan is probably using his own morality to understand their morality. And that is something that happens in homebrew, and that is not bad, but just recognize that you're doing it. And so that does let your players have a better understanding of what, if you consider something bad, then it will probably be an evil act in the game. And this is where, in the game, it's fine as long as people understand that. As long as you got some kind of mechanical way for them to understand, like that little cat on their shoulder, or something. He wasn't a little cat. He's a big cat on the shoulder.
He's a big cat, yeah.
Or something.
Strong shoulder?
Yeah. More of a hump.
Like,
okay.
But that aside, another thing I saw, aside from the 9 alignments and the 5 alignment thing and the law chaos or light side, dark side, whatever you want to say, alignment there, I also come across another one that used the, let me see if I can get it right here. Well, I'm showing it to everybody else. Let me see if I can show it to you guys. It uses Magic the Gathering and their 5 the color wheel there, and it uses those 5 things to indicate alignment instead, and more like concepts and precepts than alignment. So let me see if I can get a picture there. Okay, copy image, and I'll paste it over here for you guys. Paste.
I am an avid Magic player. I know the color pie wheel by heart. It's a beautiful thing.
It's pretty cool. I like this if you're going to do something that's not restricted by... This is more attractive to me, the way it's explained, than maybe doing like the 5 alignment thing with social good or something like that. Because I don't really... That didn't really it didn't really strike my fancy. But if you indicated it via color, that would be... One, that might be immersive for the players that actually do play Magic. But also, it does give an easier way to understand a player's... a character's current alignment. Because remember we talked last time, viewers, that alignment is not static. It can change. It is a representation of the... If you're using cosmic alignment, it would be a representation of your character's current alignment based upon their beliefs and actions in tandem with each other. It is representative, not prescriptive. So that is that. And if you were going to use this one, I would think that you would probably need to let your players know for sure that you're going to. Because this is quite different from the 9 alignments.
And one of the things I really like about it is that good and evil is not on the wheel. White does not represent goodness, and black does not represent evil. Any of the colors, especially as it's encapsulated in the story, any of those alignments can be the heroes or the villains, good or bad. It's about how they are using it and their approaches to goodness and their approaches to evilness. And in an interesting way, also their approaches towards being heroic or significant in any way. In order to be a character of consequence, in order to be a character of notoriety, you have to subscribe to something. There really isn't a neutral, not a passive neutral. You are actively orderly, or you are actively intellectual, and you may use that orderliness and that intellectuality to further your own ends to the better oppression of other people, and therefore you're evil, or to instruct schools for benevolence. But you're going to be the champion and the proponent of something distinct that will make you notable. And that's one of the things that I really like about the Magic color pie.
I think this particular one works best if if you still want to have an alignment system, but you want to do it on a personal level. And then people of that particular persuasion are attracted to each other type of situation, like birds of a feather flock together.
Yeah, it makes me think more of the Myers-Briggs kind of thing. So if you're a similar Myers-Briggs personality are going to kind of understand each other better. That's what this map makes me think of.
I don't know. I'm an INFJ according to the INFJ or INTJ according to whichever test, and I don't necessarily think I'd like hanging out with me, but y'all like hanging out with me, so that's encouraging. So,
how all the different personality types mix. It's so cool.
But I think this could work as a personal alignment system mechanic that could bleed over into setting stuff rather than cosmic alignment bleeding over into personal stuff. So whether you're going for up to individual to group or cosmic to individual. So
especially I was going to bring in another very strange alignment system. Whenever you have an opening.
Okay, I am open.
I Ching.
Oh, okay, I Ching. Yeah.
Yes. And I saw a homebrew RPG many years ago where all of the different alignments and magic and forces of nature were all aligned to I Ching, and what a character could do was not based on their personal alignment with I Ching, but rather their knowledgeable understanding of what the symbols meant. So that when you put heaven and fire together as concepts, you could create something from that. And what that meant and what that could do was based on your ability to understand and be creative. It was a very open form system. And so a character that did not align well or a player that did not align well would have a hard time coming up with something for what this could do, and it would fail. Whereas if they had a good understanding and they were in touch with it and they expressed themselves in the world with those kind of precepts, they were more effective with it. It was very, very loose in use in the system, and it was all about embodying with your character and your understanding what those precepts and alignments, per se, were. Definitely recommend that you look at what those things are. Sorry, I'm being a little distracted here. I definitely recommend looking at other moral systems, other alignment systems, other philosophies for inspiration for your RPG, and seeing what you can develop in a character and abilities from them.
Fair enough. Okie dokie. I think that sounds a lot like using I Ching also as a magic system almost.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see that too.
Well, in many ways, we were using alignment as part of a magic system in this discussion. So I think it is right, like with the connection to the divine being part of it, alignment was at least built into the magic system, if not a magic system in and of itself.
I can see that. But we're pretty close to time. So, all right, any final statements or announcements or things like that for our topic? No?
I guess I'd say that something helpful is that, at least personally, having an alignment that I'm feeling like my character is, and then a couple sessions in, reassessing that, because how I play them versus how I expect to play them is often different.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough. All right. Well, remembering that, and that leads into remembering that your alignment isn't static. It change. Well, your alignment technically would be static. It does change. So keep that in mind. Don't punish people for changing their alignment just because, and don't do it like that. Make it gradual. Make it feel real. Verisimilitude. And that's kind of mine on it. Anything from Avenue Studios before we shut the call out?
Just got one shots coming up, Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's coming out. So it'll be a lot of fun.
Yep. Should be good.
Oh, I can't wait. They are really good.
Yeah. Dan cries, so it's great.
You guys act like that's an achievement.
Oh, man. It's so good, though. I'm so glad I married a crying husband. It's great.
Ah,
Fair?
fair enough. Okie dokie. Well, thank you, travelers, for stopping by and enjoying our little chat around the hearth. Next time, if everybody's on board with it, and if you viewers are wanting to see it, we will do a discussion on playing the different alignment. We're going to kind of use the 9 alignments, and we'll say, okay, this is a good representation and way to play this alignment or that alignment. And those might be a little shorter or a little longer depending on how our discussions go. So you may we may record a few of those, and we'll see. We'll see. Knowing us, we'll discuss a lot of stuff, and it'll get padded out, and it'll be the normal amount of time. But that aside, as always, have a great day. God bless and enjoy. Bye.
Ciao.
This content was made possible by travelers and viewers like you. Thank you.
Energy? Matter?
Matter constructs is a term. Bodies, celestial bodies, yes.
A
Neutron stars are the expressos of celestial bodies. Okay.
Yes.
If y'all say so.
I mean, it's as close as it's gonna get. It's one of the most compact sets of I guess, in a sense, you could say black holes are.
Well, I was going to ask
they're
what black
probably
holes
the most,
were.
Right. They're the... Like, black holes are like when you're doing 10 espresso shots at once and feeling nothing because you're too caffeine addicted to notice it.
If the star is like correspondent to liquid, does that mean that that something as dense as that would be a coffee cake?
It's just like you ground up the beans, boiled it to make coffee, and then boiled it down to a paste again, and you're eating that. It's not mixed with flour. This is not a coffee cake. This is coffee extract.
Oh, okay. So black holes are coffee extract. But wait, black holes are actually bright. So
yeah.
Well, how are you defining bright in this sense?
I mean, everything gets sucked in, even light. So, I mean,
right.
Theoretically. So,
but that would mean that black holes are not bright, but they draw brightness to themselves. The black hole itself is emitting no light.
Yeah, black holes emit no light, but the gravitational forces cause sheer tidal effects on the bodies around them, and then those things can then glow and produce light.
It's like...
Yeah, got it. So the objects are actually glowing, not the black hole.
Yeah, the black hole. The black hole isn't giving off anything.
It's like one really cool goth person who, like, becomes friends with a bunch of extroverts.
I don't know. I've met people that call themselves goth, but they just dress goth. They're not really... that's like a dress...
Are you goth in your soul?
Yeah.
Well, that's partially because of the, like, separation. Like, there are some people who do not view other people as goth if they do not like goth music.
Nah.
Right? So, like, this term is a very nebulous term, but I am going for the stereotypical, like, if you wanted to say that your animated character was a goth, they would have all of the tropes. This person, who has a bunch of extrovert friends, that is a black hole becoming very bright by sucking in all the light around it.
Well, I think if you're looking at fictional characters, Raven from the animated...
Yes.
Raven from the animated Teen Titans.
Teen Titans?
Yeah.
She's actually a good representation of what kind of a goth person usually is. Like, you know, they're introverted and shy and kind of reserved, but
A stereotypical goth.
Yeah. But inside, they're just kind of, once you get to know them, they're good friends and some of them are even bubbly on the inside. They just don't show it to people. All right. That is not on topic for what we're discussing.
I don't know what that had to do with coffee. I missed that, but...
It would not make more sense to explain it.
Yeah.
I like coffee. I like coffee cake.
It's fair.
So
it was all about, like, Cthulhuan beings drinking stars.
See, so it all started when I lifted up my cup to drink.
Oh! Hey!
And then logic leaps.
Leaps of logic happened. We were playing frickin' hopscotch in here with ideas. It was crazy. All right.
Cool.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks.
Sorry, I got a little discombobulated. I felt on the I Ching. It was an inspiration moment that hit me as I remember how crazy invested I was, and then I remember how very long ago, and it felt like it hit me, and then it just all drained away. And I had a little distraction. Sorry.
No worries.
But at least let me say that, like, you have inspired me to relook at that, and maybe if I can find my old notes on it, I will throw them into the Discord, because it was a fascinating homebrew, but it's unlikely I will find them, but I know I wouldn't have disposed of it.
Those type of things are fun. I like those. I like those when they're themed with the system. I think that using different Judeo-Christian's not the right word, because Zoroastrianism would also fall into the ideals of that. But the lawful law and order and good and evil ecstasies, branching out from those can be fun, because it does offer granularity for some people, but I don't know that it really serves the role play to... I understand how it serves role play, but I don't understand how it would necessarily serve the system beneficially, like the setting and system beneficially, because
it would depend on it. Yeah, it depends on the setting itself. If you're doing the fantasy that's born on European folklore and a lot of that, you have either the motifs of good and evil and those kind of alignments built into the folklore and into the feel. So you're either affirming those tropes and ideas and messages and morals, or you're deliberately subverting them, but you do that within that system. So if you were doing something that was, say, in the Eastern system, where the themes and feels and morals and messages are going to be a little different, then you might want a system with moralities and alignments that better coincide with it.
I think that you can always keep the law and chaos, because the law and chaos axis is kind of universal, but the good and evil, people get so hung up on their personal beliefs of what good and evil are.
Yeah.
It makes it harder. That's why I think it has to be more associated with specific system.